All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you're all doing well. Everybody had a good weekend, a good start to the week. We got some strange stuff going on in real estate land. Purgatory, housing market purgatory. Found an article this week. An article was released about the Fed decision, and which one particular person said that we are in the housing market purgatory, which I concur. For sure, things are getting a little bit wonky in the real estate land. So they have been wonky. There's no new change there. But what is changing and what has changed is, or what hasn't changed, is the interest rate after the Fed met last week. So there's a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into, what does that actually mean how does it affect the housing market? Why didn't they change the rate? Why didn't the Fed make an announcement, adjust the rate? I mean, obviously inflation is making everything so stinking expensive. Just finding a house is so difficult. Housing affordability is a 30-year low. Like, what the heck? So we're going to kind of dive into that, maybe answer some questions. So I'm just going to get a banner going on here so that as people log on, you can drop your questions in the chat and join in on the conversation. So we're going to get this party started, or even if you don't have a question, just pop in the chat. Tell me where you're watching from. Would love to know how far the reaches of the YouTube land are reaching. So, anywho, as always, this is always a lot more fun when I bring on a guest. And today I'm going to bring in a friend down in Florida. Down in Cocoa Beach area, a place that is warmer than here, although Massachusetts, we actually hit 70 today, which is unusual. So over the last couple weeks, it's been cold. So it's nice to at least dream about warm weather. So I'm reaching all the way down to Florida, down to Cocoa Beach area, Merritt Island, to bring my good friend, Mr. Tim Streets. There we go. Hi. What's up? How you doing there?
That's a round of applause. We have that many people applauding for me. This is incredible.
How you doing?
I'm great, Jen. How are you?
Good. How are things? What's the weather down there? I have to ask.
Well, it's beautiful. I just look over to my right here. I'm looking at the Indian River, and probably well into the 80s. It's just gorgeous. It's been a wonderful weekend. I'm not trying to rub it in. I'm not trying to make you sad, but just FYI, we went for a swim in our pool for Cinco de Mayo yesterday, and my watch said it was 90 degrees, 91 degrees.
All right. Well, You know what? And I'm like still this weekend I was out doing yard work and contemplating whether it was warm enough for me to de-winterize my sprinkler system.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wait another weekend. So there you go. So I'll live vicariously through my friends in the South.
I've done it. I spent my first 30-something years in Michigan, the Metro Detroit area. So.
Oh, it's a little different. A little different.
Yeah.
So the Fed met last week, Tim, and everybody was like, "Hey, well, please do something with the rate because the interest rate predominantly drives the housing market, right?" And no go. Mr. Powell said, no, we're going to plunge you into purgatory, and we're not going to do a thing. So there you have it.
Yeah,
it's a little bonkers, but yeah. So did you see that news last week? You must have seen that news.
I did, and it's the wildest thing about all this to me is that we have a group of unelected bureaucrats who decide how much our home values are worth. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act, right? And it's easy to point fingers and say, "Oh, this should be done, that should be done." Why isn't it that way? And all the things. But it's super complicated. It is.
My friend Jackie down the Jers. Hey, dirty Jers, Jackie. Woohoo! Good to see you. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Yeah.
Shall we?
Absolutely.
So let's see if I'll bring this first article in, which is the article that kind of caught my attention. And it's this was posted on April 30th. So let's see, what my calendar here? Tuesday, I think it was. It was the day before the Fed met. So it says, like Purgatory, what will happen to the housing market if the Fed doesn't cut interest rates? Well, spoiler alert, they didn't. And they said, so the article says, this was supposed to be the year the housing market began to rebound. Mortgage rates were widely expected to fall, giving buyers a good reason to attend open houses again and boost home sales. I don't know about you, Tim, but that's what I was praying for.
Sure.
Instead, mortgage rates have been rising. That's because the U.S. Federal Reserve, which experts predicted would cut interest rates 3 times this year, is stalling on doing so until inflation improves. The Fed is expected to hold rates steady at its meeting this week. It will meet next in mid-June. It goes on to say mortgage rates are separate from the Fed's rates, this is, I think, important to know for people watching, like why, what is the relationship? And a lot of people think that there's a direct relationship between the Fed rate and the mortgage rate, but there is not. It says mortgage rates are separate from the Fed interest rates, but they generally move in the same direction. And historically, they do move in the same direction. So when the Fed lowers its rates or appears likely to do so, mortgage rates typically come down too. It says if the Fed does not cut the rate this year, the housing market will likely remain status quo, gridlocked on the resale side and builders buying down rates, allowing for the new construction side to continue its outperformance. Is Devin Bachman, Chief Operating Officer of John Burns Research and Consulting. It says until the Fed lowers the rate, the housing market is likely to remain expensive, with mortgage rates over 7% and high home prices. This is just fantastic news for everybody. The housing market has been interest rate sensitive. When rates go up, we tend to see less activity. Says the Realtor.com chief economist Daniel Hale. The housing market is even more rate sensitive now because more people are locked into low mortgage rates, and because the first-time home buyers are really stretched by high prices and borrowing costs. And we're going to get into all this. We're going to completely break this down. Piece by piece. Mortgage rates crossed the 7% threshold mid-April, jumped to an average 7.17 in a 30-year fixed rate this week, April 25th. And it says if you've been waiting for the housing market to take off again, it might feel more like purgatory. It's going to be a meh, no joke. It says M-E-H, meh year for the housing market. I love how relaxed media has become. Yeah. Like 20 years ago, you would never see in writing, meh.
Meh.
Just saying. Right. So it's a meh year for the housing market, but it's going to be better than 2023 as things are improving. Well, let's. I think keeping a glass half full approach keeps us all out of the loony bin. The increase is attributed to the reversal in inflation. And we're going to unpack all this stuff, which has been trending downward before coming in hotter than expected this year. The Fed's goal is to get inflation back down to 2%. I'm just going to stop there for a second, take a breather, so we can just unpack a little bit about what all of this, just kind of chat a little bit about, this. I mean, the one thing that I would say is, I've heard a lot of feedback, over the last several weeks, doing, from the live streams and so forth about, putting the blame on the housing prices. People, are saying, the housing prices, forget the rate, the housing prices have to come down. And the reality of it is they are interconnected, and the interest rate is the thing that creates the housing price. So one can't come down with the other, right? You can't have an interest rate that stays the same, but the housing prices, one affects the other. If the housing prices come down, then you're going to have more people. The housing, or the interest rate comes down, you're going to have more people coming in, and the housing prices go up. The only thing that would cause the housing prices to come down is not an increased rate per se, but a decreased buyer activity, which would be more linked towards, I would think, the job market, or even if inflation is not able to be contained. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mr. Street?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of people who will conflate what's happening in terms of home prices versus what's happening with interest rates. Something that's important to remember is the Fed talks about we need to wait for inflation to get under control before we talk about interest rates. Well, one of the issues with that is if we could do that if we quit printing money. I mean, if we just stop running the printing presses, that's what's causing the inflationary problem. And what's especially troubling, and it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just me being an old crotchety geezer, but it drives me insane that our goal is that we're devaluing our currency by only 2% a year. So
right.
How nuts is that? Like they're like, well, our goal is to get down to 2%. So you're telling me that you're intentionally letting things get worse before you let them get better.
Right.
I don't think they're willing to rip the Band-Aid off.
I would agree. I actually pulled an article. Let me get this down here. I pulled an article because I was researching this. Because I mean, to be honest, I'd like to know. I mean, I'm not an expert in this field. So, we talk about inflation, but why does, what causes it and whatnot. So this is an article that was, it was published December 2022. But the concepts, I mean, it's the Harvard Business Review, so it's all, the concepts don't change. And they kind of go into what is inflation, and what causes inflation. And this was very interesting because it's like, well, why are we, why are we here? Is it the Fed that's impacting inflation? Is it the businesses? That the root of the problem with these interest rates, the reason why the Fed isn't stepping in is because they know they want to dampen that inflation, right? Because things are just getting more and more and more expensive. And what was interesting, it says, what causes inflation is at its root, inflation is driven too much demand relative to supply. Too much demand relative to supply. It says inflation occurs when the aggregate quantity of goods demanded at any particular price level is rising more quickly than the aggregate quantity of goods supplied at that price level. Okay, this is what causes demand to outpace what causes demand to outpace supply. Says that can happen for a few different reasons, and they go on to different things that different structures. And the book that they wrote, it says Moss structures the book based on output, money, expectations, and then it goes into all three. And he says that goes on to talk about supply shock and how in theory a decrease of this in the supply of a good should lead to a higher price, fewer buyers, new equilibrium. Okay. If we're talking about inflation, we're not talking about we're talking about the price of goods, eggs, bread, gas, all the crap we buy on a daily basis, right? And when we went through the pandy, there was an incredible amount of supply, right? And this is my simple brain digest. I am not a whiz at this, right? But in terms of just bringing this down to the most basic level, this is, we had an increased supply because everyone was stuck at home, and then the government started shoving money in everybody's pockets, and they had nothing to do but buy and spend and order on Amazon and order delivery and order DoorDash and all the things, right? Spend, which resulted in decreased supply, right? Shortages in building materials, shortages in, you couldn't get right? And you couldn't get a sofa for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. So you know what I mean? So you have that shock. It wasn't a gradual thing. It happened in a heartbeat. And then it says, the other part of inflation, money supplies, with more cash in the pockets and bank accounts, consumers often find new reasons to buy things. When you're sitting around at home and you can't go anywhere, what are you going to do? You're going to go online and buy stuff. increased the new reasons to buy things, especially when the government's throwing money at you. So it's just very interesting. And then it's like, and then it goes into expectations and spirals as many models of inflation. The cause isn't an increase in the money supply, but an unanticipated increase in the money supply. The intuition is that if everyone knows demand will increase because there's more money flowing, then supply will increase to match it. So it's the unexpected increase in demand or decrease in supply that sets off inflation. So I think I just feel like it's like, how do we get out of this? We gotta stop buying crap.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I understand the Fed's they're trying to keep the rates high to dampen everyone's spending. Right? Because the more we spend, the more corporate America is like, well, if they're going to buy it, we're going to charge more money. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the shame of it all. And it's really easy to confuse. Like, a lot of people will use the word inflation and they will just assume we're talking about the currency, but we're not always. And I think what the HBR does in this article is they kind of delineate the difference between inflationary pricing, which is just simple supply and demand, versus currency and money supply, which absolutely is subject to those same pressures. A lot of people don't realize that the money supply has a value to it. It is legal tender, which means if you have X amount of goods in your economy, and those goods are tied to X amount of currency, and you just print a whole bunch more currency, necessarily the value of those goods must go down. It's a tried and true equation. And so, back during these issues we had during the pandemic, those were largely supply chain driven. We kind of set our own trap on that. I have a friend who ran a furniture store, and of course his furniture was all sold out in a month and he couldn't get any more in. It wasn't that demand went up necessarily. It was that he couldn't get any more stuff in. So then, of course, the perception is demand went up because his shelves were empty.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
So that's one of the things I kind of like to be. The Fed always reminds me of, it's almost like somebody who, they break your leg and hand you a cane, and then they say, "Why aren't you taking me for the cane?" Can I quote you on that one? Yeah, for sure.
That's a good one.
but they sit there and they act like, hey, we're trying to help you. We need to curb inflation. Meanwhile, you're responsible for it in the first place.
I know. Yes.
Welcome to politics.
Yeah, it all ties into, it all ties into this thing because it's like, and the reason why I wanted to have this discussion and go into this is because I think that there's just, of course there's miscommunication, there's misinformation out there, right? There's a ton of information that people are selectively putting out, the media selectively puts out. And unfortunately, I think that, especially when it comes to housing, that, because of that selective media, and this runs rampant in our industry. Real estate agents,
sure.
They focus on maybe one side of the argument, but they don't actually expand back and be like, okay, so but why is that the way it is? Okay, so the Fed didn't lower rates and the interest rates are so high. Okay, but why? You know what I'm saying? Let's it's like a Shrek, peel back the layers of the onion. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
And, so it's like, because really you got to get to the core of this thing so that you can be an educated consumer so that you don't just sit here and go, oh, it's hard, it's expensive. It's like, well, what needs to happen? What actually needs to change, to affect the change that we need to get to the point so that you can afford the house.
Right.
I think it's just, you got to be educated. I mean, I think the notes that I had, we're at about 3.5% current inflation rate. Does that sound right? And the Fed likes to be between, in a perfect world, they want to be 2%, right? Yeah. Or at least under 3, but at 3.5% inflation, they're not going to hold. I mean, what do you think if they're going to meet mid-June? What do you think the chances of them skipping over June? I mean, what do you think the chances of inflation changing between now and June?
it's anybody's guess, but when it comes down to it, this is, as much as we like to think we're the center of the universe, we in the real estate industry aren't. And so there's a lot of other sectors in our economy that also care what the Fed is doing. And so one of the things I like to think about is if it harms the real estate industry but benefits the other 99% of the economy out there, what is the Fed morally and ethically bound to do? First, second of all, I like to think about whose thumb is on the scale at this point. So coming up in January, everybody knows we have an election in November. If anybody believes that the Fed is completely nonpartisan, I've got a bridge to sell you. They know who their bosses are. So they're going to, there's always, unfortunately, it's 2024 and the time and age we live in, we always have to look 7 layers, like you said, underneath the onion to find out what is truly driving the activities of people who sadly kind of have our destinies in mind. That, people's debt to income ratio is a very real limitation. You cannot get lending on a home if your debt to income ratio isn't working. And the higher the interest rates, the less house you can afford. It's simple math.
Yeah, I actually have an article that I'm going to share in a bit about that in terms of like right now what the average is in the U.S. and it's abysmal in terms of what the average housing payment, what portion of your average housing payment or how much your income is being spent on housing is what I'm trying to spit out, but can't successfully do right at this moment. It's bonkers. It's bonkers. I wanted to jump back to this article and because I believe there was something else that I wanted to just finish up on that article there. Where was it? The increase is attributed to the reversal in inflation. We already talked about that. Hale now anticipates the Fed will cut rates twice this year instead of 3 times. And she does. They haven't cut rates yet.
I'm still waiting.
We're still waiting for once. Never mind twice. We'll see. And she doesn't expect the Fed to bring rates down until later this year. We're less likely to see them cut as soon as people had expected. June is pretty unlikely at this point. Interesting. That kind of just answered my question. But September is still a realistic possibility. It really is going to depend on what is going to happen with inflation, and that is difficult to predict. That's going to mean higher mortgage rates for longer, putting a big dent into the budgets of buyers who need to finance their home purchases. Those buyers will either have to compromise on the size, condition, location, or features of the home, or put their searches on pause. I have seen both happen. Some are likely to be priced out of the market entirely. Yeah. They go on to say Hale expects prices to be basically flat this year, still high but not rising, depends on where you are in the country. Median home price, this blows my mind. The median home list price was $424,900 in March.
Wow.
$424,900 in March. The good news is more homes continue to hit the market, again, depending on where you are in the country. Despite higher interest rates, Hale believes this will help boost the number of home sales as buyers have more to choose from. That's debatable.
I agree.
That's debatable. You have 2 houses, you have 1 house, and then you have another house that comes on the market. Now you have 2. Now you have a doubling of inventory. It's just 2 houses.
Right. Yeah. Not only that, but it's like being a broke college kid and say, hey, I got 2 cars you can buy. One's a Rolls Royce, one's a Lamborghini.
No joke.
You can't afford either.
No, 100%. I mean, it's like, my daughter, my grandmother, her grandmother, very well meaning, gave her some birthday money or whatnot. It was like, here's some help with the college, expenses. And she gave her $100 and she's like, Mom, that's like a couple trips to the grocery store.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, $100, not too long ago, it was like, okay, so this will float me, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. We got some chatting going on by my friend David Matney over here. Let's see what Dave is up to. He says, So Jackie says they'll cut the rates before the election. I think you're right on that. I think they're going to skip June. I don't see anything happening in June, but I do think it's likely because, Tim, it's what you talked about. You know what I mean? It's exactly what you talked about with it's an election. It's an election year, and it's that's the way everybody wants to look like a hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Yeah, and that's the biggest problem of all this is instead of market principles and supply and demand actually driving the cost of things, we have people with interests, political interests, and thumbs on the scales that are going to, for better or worse, they're going to affect your home ownership destiny. They are.
Yep.
There's no way around it.
Let's see. Jen and Tim are you seeing many cash buyers in your market? Actually, not as many as I was during COVID. I've seen a decrease. I mean, there is money. I mean, we're on the outskirts of Boston, so there's plenty of money floating around up here in the Northeast. But I've seen less. How about you down in Florida? I mean, your market is totally different story down there.
Yeah, I mean, we actually get quite a bit. Obviously, down here in Florida, we get a lot of folks who are looking for vacation homes, or they're looking to build their rental portfolio for whatever reason. So we do see a lot of out-of-state cash money come in. Typically, people buying within the state, if they're paying cash, they're typically a downsizer.
Yep.
So they've built up a ton of equity in their house here. The kids have flown the coop, and they're ready to just downsize into something simple, a little 2-bed beach condo, and they can usually pay cash for that as well. So the thing about a cash buyer, which a lot of people kind of ignore that reality, which just seems very obvious, is they don't care what the interest rates are. As a matter of fact,
no, it doesn't. It's 100% irrelevant, right?
Matter of fact, it's not only not relevant, it actually, a high interest rate helps a cash buyer.
Well, I was just going to say, because all that interest is tax deductible, right? Is that where you're going with it?
Where I was going with it is, if the interest rates are high, then the prices of homes must come down. And if you're paying cash, that's fine. That's a good thing for you. What I'm trying to get at is, if the interest rates are higher than normal and you have a monthly payment that you're capped at, where your lender will not give you more than that, then that's going to necessarily limit you. So then home prices necessarily have come down. And in our county here in Brevard County, they've come down, not a lot, maybe 3% over 12 months ago.
Okay.
They've come down a little bit. But what I've noticed is the time on market has shot up by like 64%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's when you have a cash buyer, they relish the high interest rates because now there's a downward price pressure on the market that they're not really subject to.
Interesting. Yeah, that, you know what, I would say that I see where you're coming from. I would agree with that. I would agree with that for sure. 100%. And I wonder if this will that trend will continue, as people are moving forward, to bring more buyers into the market. That being said, I still maintain that, people move not because of the market.
Right.
People will move because of personal needs, right? They will move because there's a drive in their life, or there's a job change, or there's a family change, a divorce, too many babies, or aging parent, or any, or a death. I mean, all of these things, those people are not going to wait. They're not going to wait. They can't afford to wait. They're carrying, as taxes are increasing, as depending on where you are, you have insurance costs increasing in certain states, the southern states, you guys, and all along the South Coast, flood insurance rates have gone through the roof. Those carrying costs are expensive, and a homeowner that is carrying that property, that really doesn't want to be carrying that property, doesn't, there's the desire strong enough, and it's actually costing them more money. They might look at it and say, okay, I'm going to pay a higher rate, but I'm going to get out from underneath it. And maybe they're going north. Maybe they're going to the Midwest. You know what I mean? And getting away from those high interest rate costs or whatnot. But the reality of it is the underlying cause is going to be, there's going to be a pressure point that people are going to hit. Now, there are going to be buyers that just can't, that want to, but just can't, right? And those are the buyers that are going to sit. They're just going to sit and have to wait it out. But I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen. I mean, it's been quiet before, but I've never seen, and I don't think the history of the last 50 years of the real estate market where we've been really keeping the stats, there hasn't been a point where no houses are sold.
Right.
And it stops entirely. There's peaks and valleys of a lot of activity and then little activity and a lot of activity and little activity, but there's always something happening. And I think it's going to be a valley the rest of the into the election. But it's not going to be like nothing, this market, it's going to stop to the point where the prices plummet. I just don't, do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
I just don't see that happening. I don't see that we getting to the point where we'll see. We'll see. I mean,
people die, babies are born, people get divorced, like things like that. Some things just don't change. There will always be somebody who moves, irrespective of real. I've moved several times in my life, and I have to say, I've done both. I've had a root canal and I've moved several times. I would probably sign up.
We've had a root canal. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, I have perfect dental health. Never had a cavity in my life. All of a sudden, just this weird tooth. I need a root canal.
Your dentist is like,
I broke it in half.
I got a treat for you today.
It was crazy.
Bet you. You're like, no, I wanted a lollipop, not a root canal.
Crazy tangential story, I know, but I would rather have a root canal than move again. That's how badly I detest moving. And so when you hear about people who cite the interest rates are too high, they weren't serious anyway. I've never known anybody in the history of people I've worked with who have said, I love my home, I can't stand moving, but doggone it, 3% is 3%. I'm going to take advantage of that interest rate and move. I don't see that happening ever.
No. We have Kathy Ains, I think is how you say the last name. Thank you so much for jumping on, Kathy. Watching in Michigan.
Yeah, fellow Michigander.
It sucks here. Well, there you go.
That's why Michigan's a great place to be from.
Well, so we had a live stream. I think it was last week, and we had Joe Perek on, and we had somebody in the chat and talking about the areas of the country that are going to pop because of all of these pockets. Like there are certain pockets in the country. I mean, where I'm at on the south coast, south of Boston, the Boston area is stupid expensive, right? The average, the median sale price is like $850,000, and where I'm at, it's down in the 500s. So, and it wasn't always that way; it was lower, and so because it was lower, people flocked over the last 15 years. People have been flocking down to this. I'll drive an hour to Boston, but because I'm going to save a bucket full of money on a house. Well, they're doing that, and now our prices are starting to, or have inched up. Well, there are pockets in the country, and he brought up Detroit as one of those pockets that like potentially up and coming that will potentially do a turnaround. Have you heard this? As one of the towns, or Michigan, one of those areas that are like maybe, kind of sleeper areas, or maybe it's not doing so great, but maybe they'll be up and coming improved communities. To try to draw in. I mean, there are certain things. Ohio, I think he said. Idaho. There's a bunch of towns, a bunch of areas, but states that were, hidden gems or untapped potential. It sounds like a motivational speaker. Untapped potential in the housing market. So, we feel it for you, Kathy. It does. It sucks a lot of areas. So I wanted to bring up talking about areas that suck and how hard it is. Segue into this Fortune article. Almost impossible. Janet Yellen despairs at housing market's 1-2 punch for first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers, man. I feel for our first-time home buyers. Anyways, I'll get into this. It says it's official. Home prices are up nearly 5% over every year in every major U.S. city. You know what I should do is I should put a little disclosure at the beginning of these live streams, and tell people to take, like, if you're on any kind of like depressive medication or whatnot, or just listen to some happy music before you log on, because this is like I'm like, God, I want to deliver something happy. At some point in time, I will be like, guess what? I got great news. Finally, only took us 10 years to get there. But in any event, it says official home prices up nearly 5% over, nearly 5% over year in every major U.S. city. For a while, it wasn't that way, according to a Redfin report. Meanwhile, current mortgage rates are nearing the 8%. Peak from fall 2023. That deadly combination is making it almost impossible for first-time homebuyers to break into the U.S. housing market. This is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Wait till hear what she says, though, about what the White House wants to try to do to help fix this. With home prices have gone up, this is not breaking news. She's just reiterating some stuff. But anyways, with home prices having gone up, and now with much higher interest rates and mortgage rates, it's almost impossible for first-time homebuyers, Yellen says. Yellen also cited the lock-in effect as a major obstacle. We've talked about that quite a bit on these live streams. Phenomenon is when current homeowners are reluctant to sell their home out of fear of losing their low mortgage rates, only to trade them for higher rates and higher home prices. And then it goes on to say, a pair of housing tax credit, and this is all election stuff right here. A pair of housing, and I'm not getting like, what this side, that side, whatever is irrelevant and on this live stream. However, in terms of how it affects the housing market is what I want to talk about. A pair of housing tax credit proposed by President Biden, could potentially help ease the lock-in effect. One tax credit would be to provide $10,000 for first-time homebuyers, while a separate $10,000 tax credit would benefit, it's to say tax credit, not a discount or a gift or like off your closing disclosure. A tax credit would benefit homeowners in selling their starter home. There's no definition of starter home, although I think they said you have to be less than the median price in your area to be qualified as a starter home, to move into a larger home. The hope would be that this particular tax credit would increase starter home supply, which is extremely low as more current homeowners hold on to their current properties. However, the home prices reaching a near record $383,000 and change at median, according to Redfin, many buyers are still excluded. We know that affordable housing and starter homes are an area where we really need to do a lot to increase availability. Okay, I got some thoughts, Tim. I got some thoughts on this. Okay, so they want to give home sellers now. Imagine this, right? You want to sell your home, right? You want to get you're financially. You're like, you know what? Or even you having too many kids.
Okay.
You want a bigger house. Your kids are driving you. You're flipping crazy. You're like, I need a home office. I'm working from home. I got these kids. They're driving me nuts. They're loud. I need space. You got the income coming in. You can financially, you're like, I can swing a little bit, a bigger mortgage payment and all the things. Yeah. But you're going to lose your interest rate. You lose your interest rate, and the higher rate basically means for more money, you're going to buy the same house, right? You sell at that low rate, you take that equity, you put it into the next house. Now you're buying in that house at a higher rate. So that money costs you more. So you're basically Steven, getting the same house for more money. Right? Okay. Follow me so far?
I'm with you.
The government says, but Tim, we'll give you $10,000 tax credit. Does that sway your decision? Does that really sway? You're going to have a higher mortgage payment for the same size house, which means if you want to get that thing, the reason why you're moving is to get more space. Not only do you have to okay, you're going from this house to this house. Okay, just from the get-go, it's a higher payment. Now you got to jump way up here, and maybe your mortgage payment's jumping up $700 to $1,000 a month for 30 years.
Right.
$10,000, is that going to be enough to sway you to move?
Well, certainly not. And
it's just silly. It's complete disconnect of what actually is happening in the housing market. It makes me so frustrated.
It's just, when you're in government, you have to be, you don't want to be accused of doing nothing. So doing something, meaningless as it is, $10,000 amortized over 30 years is what, $70 a month roughly? What the heck is that going to do for anybody?
$70 is like, in a family, that's like, part of your grocery bill.
That's a breakfast.
That's like, no, that's actually no joke. Like, or even that's like going to McDonald's.
Yep.
Maybe 2 to 3 times.
If they were serious,
McDonald's is stupid expensive. Can we just talk about that for a second? Like, it's like this whole thing is like 25-cent burgers and all the things, and it was super cheap, right? Remember, you're young and you're like, oh, I'm going to go get a burger and a $1 meal and the fry and everything. Now I go to the drive-thru with my 17-year-old. I get a Happy Meal, for crying out loud, because I don't want the big thing, and it's still like $20, $25, $20, $24. I'm like, I could go to a restaurant. Anyways, I digress.
Yep.
And I digress.
Groceries are more expensive. Employees are now more expensive. I mean,
but I feel like, and I've mentioned this before, but they're trying to say, okay, we're going to attack the problem head on by giving the American people what they think we need. What we need is for them to do what we actually need. Sometimes when you have a child, right? You got kids. Sometimes the thing that they need is not the thing that they're asking for.
Well, for sure.
They have a toothache and they're like, yeah, but I'll feel so much better if you have give me ice cream. It's like, no, if you have a toothache, I actually need you to eat this other healthy food or whatever, or we need to change the diet, whatever.
Yes.
What they need to do with all that millions and millions and millions of dollars, they need to give towns incentives. They need to take that money and they need to incentivize builders to build more housing, starter housing. End of story. We can't take blood from a stone. They're trying to convince people to sell. Instead of convincing people to sell, what we need, we don't have enough homes. We have all these millennials coming in, brand new buyers. They're taking up places. It's like, well, great. Let's incentivize. Okay, here's another scenario. We're going to incentivize these starter homes, right? So they're going to sell, but now that person who sells that starter home is going to go and buy another home, which takes that home away from another buyer. So what are we gaining here, people? What are we gaining here? It's 1 for 1. The challenge is not convincing the sellers to buy, although it would help. The challenge is we just need more homes. We need more starter homes. And the only way to do that is to incentivize the builders, make it easier, make it more financially feasible, cut through the red tape, and create an environment where these builders are able to build housing. That's the end of my TED Talk. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm getting a little heated about it, because it makes me so. It just seems so black and white to me. What do you think? The
get the heck out of the way is the only thing. The only thing they can do to help is to stop trying to help.
Right.
It reminds the economy is an ecosystem, and it has laws and it has rules, and they're just demonstrable and they're repeatable, and it might as well be an ecosystem like in nature. It reminds me of the folks who noticed pollution in a lake, and so they introduced an amoeba that would eat that pollution, but then that started running rampant and killing some of the native species. So then they introduced a certain frog, and then that frog ate the amoebas, but guess what? Now that frog is predating it. And they keep introducing new things to solve this monster that they created in the first place. Sit down, shut up, get out of the way, and let builders do what they're going to do. Let homebuyers are going to do it, and stop devaluing our currency.
You know what? You don't have to be I feel like they're trying to be the hero of the story.
Yeah, of course.
They're trying to be the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? That's not your job.
No.
That's not your job. Your job is to represent and support us. Yeah. Let the consumer be the hero. Let the small businessman be the hero. Let the builders be the heroes. Let them be the ones that come in and swoop in and save the day by building an apartment, condo building or townhome row houses, or any of the. I mean, there's tracts of land. There is available land, right?
Oh, for sure.
There is available land. How about all of these requirements that have size restrictions? Now, I'm not talking about jamming properties into every little corner and crevice of this country, but there are places that it can be done where you just have towns that are like, NIMBY, not my backyard. No, well, guess what? Your schools are going to get $100,000, $200,000, whatever this tax credit would be as it's represented in that town for an estimation of how many sellers should sell. You give that to a town and be like, I'm going to give you this tax credit. And now all of a sudden you have better schools, better roads, better infrastructure for the town because they have this tax credit, because they're reducing this friction with the builders. And I know it's way more complicated than that. I understand that, but it just seems to me like they're undercomplicating things by, saying this is going to solve the problem. Everybody gets 10,000, like Oprah. You get 10,000, and you get 10,000, and you get 10,000. Like,
I don't know that it is more complex than what you said, though, because that's the biggest trick that they play on us is they make it seem like there's so many complexities to this that we could never, as mere mortals, understand what these people on high do for us. The reality is the biggest challenge that you're going to have is finding a group of politicians who don't need to take credit for everything.
Right.
It simply doesn't exist. So that we don't have a supply problem. We don't have a demand problem. We don't have an ability problem or a skills problem or an available space problem. We have a problem with people who won't sit back and get out of the way and let citizens just do what they're going to do and create homes and make livelihoods for themselves.
Because they know better than we do.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can, as soon as we figure out how to get these guys to not need credit, to take credit for everything, then we'll solve the problem. So I don't think that'll ever happen. Let's do something more reasonable, like establish contact with alien life forms or something. I don't know.
Maybe the aliens will bring in they'll bring in futuristic materials.
They'll take Janet Yellen back home.
It just or maybe we just get like 3D printed houses.
Yeah, there you go.
I would love to see that. I watched that. Several years ago, right? They were starting to do that, and really like, do you remember when the first 3D printed house was produced? I want to say it was like I think it was pre-Pandy. I want to say it was pre-Pandy.
There's been derivatives of them out there, but yeah, I mean
but it's nothing in mass scale.
Right.
But I mean the machine that comes in, and they literally, you have this thing all programmed. And they type in the requirements and they type in all the data, and there's a couple guys there monitoring the machine, and this thing it takes a bit to set it up, but once you just press the go button and the thing works 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then you got a house, and it does need finish work, right? So you're not putting any contractors out of business because all the finish work still needs to happen. You need plumbing and electrical and all that stuff, but like in terms of a good use of material, right? And they're insulated and all the things and they're way less expensive.
Was it printing with concrete or was it the
concrete?
Plastic?
It was with concrete.
Yep,
it was basically like a 3D printer.
Yeah. Yep.
I have a 3D printer. I'm not building a house with it, but it was like if you take that and like put it into that. Remember that movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yes.
Put it in reverse, and like the nozzle's like this big. And it's just, and whereas the nozzle in my 3D printer is literally smaller than a pinhead, right? And it's just moving in a pre-designed, and it's just laying out the concrete like toothpaste.
It's so cool.
And by the time it goes through the exterior, and by the time it circles around to where it started, it's already hardened enough that they can put the next layer. And then the next layer, and then it adjusts for openings for windows. It's fascinating, and I just feel like I think hopefully maybe that is, something like that as we're advancing, there's got to be something different that happens, right? That gets us through past where we're at now. There's got to be, right? There's got to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't know.
It presupposes that the reason we find ourselves in the situation we're in is because we don't have efficient building technologies. And unfortunately, it's not. I'm sure it's a helper, it's a contributor to this.
Yep.
But the root cause to all of this has very little to do with how efficiently and inexpensively we can build homes, and a lot more to do with the fact that our money is being inflated under our noses. And what was a $20 sheet of plywood yesterday now costs $80 today for no reason. The trees aren't more expensive. The sawmills aren't more expensive. It's just there's a lot more people out there with that money in their pocket they can spend on remodeling.
100%. Yeah, and actually on the heels of that, in terms of the cost factor, because you can get into a home that's substantially less expensive, but you're not sacrificing, if you don't want a condo and get a single family home, except it's instead of traditional stick built, it's, 3D printed,
yeah.
That would be significant. This article goes on to say that there are several factors working against the first-time home buyers in today's market, right? And we've already kind of touched on this. Rising home prices in conjunction with rising mortgage rates have driven this is crazy. Has driven the median monthly housing payment. This is the median monthly housing payment to $2,890. $2,890, a whopping 15% year-over-year increase. It goes on to say U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data, which is sometimes questionable, but nonetheless shows the median weekly earnings, full-time workers as a fourth quarter 2023 was $1,403 for the week. Assuming the monthly median housing payment, this means that homeowners would spend nearly half of their income each month, right? Typical recommended for renters and homeowners shouldn't spend more than 30% of their income on housing. So that 30% is always like you were talking about this earlier. 30% is the goal, right? 50%. And that that's half that doesn't include car payments, education, higher education payments. My daughter's graduating from college on Sunday, and she's graduating, even though she got a ginormous artistic scholarship, covered half of her college tuition and room and board, still like six figures. It's crazy. And it's worthwhile, it is propelling her to get into areas and profession, areas of profession that she wouldn't have if she didn't get that higher education and get those contacts and get all that necessary education. But she's 22 years old. And now not only is she going to have rent and everything else that goes with it, she's got this higher education bill on top of it. Yeah. And so 50%. It's just crazy. It says, assuming the value of a median priced home in the U.S. of about $383,000 and the standard 20% down payment, a couple would need to come up with an eye-popping $76,000 up front, which just simply isn't doable for Americans. So, Tim, eye-popping $76,000 up front, but the government's going to give you $10,000. So instead of 76, you only have to come up with 66.
You only have to net come up with 6. You still got to come up with 76, and then when you file taxes, hopefully your accountant's talented enough to get you that 10K back.
What the heck?
Yeah.
What the heck? Like how is this going to save us?
It's the government, the economy, what's the old saying? It was if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it.
It's just I feel like, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because we have an election year, right? And I feel like this needs to be talked about because people will be hearing this and they'll be influenced by it, which is exactly what they want, right? But the reality of it is, and I'm not pro one side or the other, right? This has nothing to do with party lines and all the things. This has to do with just in general, right? Politicians in general. It's like if you don't really understand, what the impact on something like this, because it sounds great, but what's the impact? The impact is minuscule compared to what we actually need.
Yeah, it's lip service.
It kind of is, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I wanted to, what was something else I wanted to show you? Oh, stand by. I wanted to bring this up. This graph I thought was super interesting. So I found this graph. This is Realtor.com. How much you need to earn to buy a home in America's top 50 metros. So they can go into obviously everything, but this is April 2024 data, right? And some of this stuff is staggering. I mean, if I look up here in my neck of the woods, Boston, Cambridge, Newton, median home price $870,000. Required income to purchase a median priced home $226,000.
Wow.
Crazy. You're down. Let's see. Where are you in Florida? Orlando.
They don't have. I'm over on the East Coast, but they don't really have me highlighted. I guess I'm closest to Orlando, Kissimmee, right?
So right here, Orlando, Kissimmee, like right where Disney is.
Yeah.
Median price $440,000. So required income to purchase $116,000. We go over to New Orleans. Median home price $335,000. Required income $90,000 a year. What I was curious about, $118,000. If we go into St. Louis, some of these. See, this is where I think this part of the country is going to potentially get more attraction, more attention. Median St. Louis $294,000, $82,000.
And these figures assume, that $82,000 you're making, you have nothing coming out of it. You have no kids, you have no student loans, you have no rent.
Yeah, I think, and this is a household, right? So this is household income, which means if you've got two instead of one, that makes it even better.
Sure.
Makes it a lot easier, but you're absolutely correct. Oklahoma. I mean, in 98,000. I mean, it was just very interesting to see, and I'm going to put a link to this in the description for anybody that's interested and whatnot. So, this is a good segue. If anyone needs a referral for any of these areas because you just want to know what your home value is, link in the description. I can connect you to somebody out there and get the real scoop. Agents that actually know what the heck they're doing and give you a true market value of your house so you know exactly where you fall in all of this. I'd like to, I want to shift gears, Tim.
Let's do it.
And do something a little bit lighter. Because I feel like I need to alleviate the situation here. Alleviate the conversation. So I have a couple I did a video last week on, not on the housing market, but it was on about, getting your house ready for sale and 10 things that you should not have in your house when you put your house on the market. And I got a couple comments, on my channel that I thought was interesting. I thought we'd chat, put it up on the screen.
That's such a great topic. I love that. Because the mind wanders. I can think of way more than 10 things you shouldn't have in your house.
There really is. I had to pick and choose. I really had to pick and choose. But, a couple of these, it was like, oh, I didn't think about that. So this comes from Jemmy7339. And I had mentioned, I had a segment in there, a section about pets. And they say, yes to no pets. There should be a requirement to disclose if a cat has been in the house. Cat allergens are strong and long-lasting, well beyond the time the cat may have been removed. Animals present during a showing might present a big liability. Why would an agent allow that? We're going to talk about it. Trophy animals on the wall or otherwise may also turn away potential buyers. So I didn't think about that, to be honest, depending on what part of the country you are in.
Right.
It could be like a common practice to be like, these are my trophy animals. or maybe you move from one part of the country where that was common to a part of the country that it isn't common, but you took that with you. I'll be honest, my ex-husband was a hunter. He would do bow hunting, and he deer. And so I have, until he takes them very soon with him to get them out of my garage, but these deer heads, that were taxidermy, the whole 9 yards. If I put my house on the market, those would have to be covered up, because a buyer, it's not about insulting the buyers. It's not about catering to everyone's, particular interest or whatnot. It's all about making the buyers feel comfortable, because they're the ones that are writing the check. And it's not about dismissing what your likes are or whatnot. I talk a lot about this in that video, about that mental shift of changing your home into a house on the market. Yeah. And it's not just physical staging, it's also mental shifting as well, right? You got to change your mindset to be like, yeah, but that's part of my home. It's like, it's not your home anymore.
Right.
It's not your home. You are trying to create an environment. The goal is to create the environment so the buyers can see themselves living there. And the easier, the less friction that a homeowner has for that buyer, the more likely they're willing to open their wallets, and the more likely the price they put on that offer is going to be a little bit higher. And so if you have it too personalized, then it's really hard for buyers to move in and mentally move in.
It's hard for them to see themselves in it. They need a blank canvas to paint their lives on.
100%. And it sounds kind of corny and all the things, but it does. There's validity. Studies been shown and all the whole 9 yards. The whole thing about the animals, though, with the cat allergens and long lasting. Like, I have cat. I have pretty significant animal allergens, asthma and all the things, and I can feel it in my lungs. Like, if I've been into a house that has animals or has had animals, like, I might be okay, but like an hour later, I can feel it, and they're absolutely correct. Like, you can't just buy it, and like, you have to paint, you have to treat floors, you have to do all the things. So it's like, to know that before you walk in the house, it's interesting. It's interesting.
One of the things I learned about having I have a couple of vacation rentals, and one of the hard lessons I learned is, you have to let people with service animals in. There is no saying, hey, you can't bring them in. And what's interesting about that is you have to balance their right to have their service animal against the health consequences that a follow-on guest might have. So one of the things I've done, and this might help people if they're looking to list their homes who have pets, is I bought an ozone machine, and a little $50 ozone machine on Amazon. Yep. And I run that sucker after we have people with pets there, and you would never know it in a million years. It zaps. Really? Yes, it's awesome.
Interesting.
It zaps all the allergens out of the air. I've never had a complaint. So it's funny, because I find, like, hotels are the same way. They find themselves in a weird situation where it's like, listen, I can't really tell people who have the need for a service animal, they can't keep their animal in here, right? But they also have to be sensitive to people who are coming in afterwards. So yeah, I use an ozone machine on that, and it's just been wonderful.
Susie Woozy, I love that name. That's pretty awesome.
Beautiful little doggy too. Look at that.
Yes, look at that. Look at that little puppy. Pentagram, stuffed game animals, political banners, vermin traps, really dirty anything. Amen.
Susie, I got to know what homes you've been going into, because
right.
It sounds like you've been to the jungle and back.
That's a loaded comment for sure.
It sounds a little personal. It sounds like she knows this. She's been down this beaten path before. She's like,
but she's not wrong. She's 100% not wrong, because all those things are a serious, like, a serious turnoff, and potentially a very serious turnoff, and you just don't know. You just don't know.
You wonder if some people are serious about selling their house when you go to tour it, and you're like, really? This is your house set up for showings? Okay, interesting.
I remember there was a house. Oh my gosh, this is probably like, oh God, it must be like 18 20 years ago, probably about 20 years ago. And I was with a first-time home buyer. And we're looking at this small house. It was probably like 800 square feet, 2-bedroom. And we walk in, and it was like, whoa. The walls were painted black. They had a room that was black everything. Black walls, black ceiling, black floor. It was interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? The buyer didn't buy it.
I'm shocked.
The buyer didn't buy it. And it's not we were both kind of skeeved out. We were like, this is very uncomfortable. And so, not everybody's going to be uncomfortable. I get that. Not everybody's going to be uncomfortable. But like, if you have an audience, a buyer audience, like, why limit that audience? You could leave it that way, but then instead of 20 people, you might only attract maybe 3.
Yeah. And do you want 20 people competing to buy your home, or 3? Because I'll take the 20 all day long.
I'll take the 20 if it means painting the house, painting the inside on a color that I don't like. If it means putting cash money in my pocket.
Amen. That's it.
Where's the paint store?
That's right. Yeah.
Where's the paint store? You know what I mean? Because the thing is it's just temporary. If you're packing the stuff, you got to pack it anyways.
Yeah.
Pack it up early.
Yeah.
You got to move.
Yeah.
If you're serious, like you just said earlier, like if you're serious about moving, then start your moving. Start your moving. You got to pack it anyways. Get it up. Put it in storage or boxes or whatever you got to do, and start mentally moving out. And so it's not comfortable. It's not it's not your home anymore. You're not displaying your own stuff, and you're not like the color. It's a short term. It's a short-term inconvenience.
Yep.
Because you're going to quicken the amount of time you get the buyer, and then the faster you get the buyer, the sooner you can be on your way and paint the next house black.
Can't stop looking at Susie Woozie's dog. That's the cutest thing.
What she says, I'm looking. Oh, she's looking now. What market are you in? Where are you in the country, Suze? That's what I would like to know. See how difficult it is. She says, I put an offer on a house that has a black painted room and many dead hunted stuffed animals, but it's Central PA, and the price was decent. So there you go. That's exactly what we're talking about. If they charged market value or even a little bit more, you probably would have not looked at it. But because the price was decent, and that's the trade-off. And yes, am I saying that you have to paint and you have to take all this stuff down? And you're the captain of your ship.
Right.
Every seller's the captain of their ship. However, you've got to just understand that everything comes at a price. And whether it's your inconvenience of you don't want to pack it up, or you charge a lesser price, it's up to you, but you can't have both. Exactly. You can't charge the top value and not do anything to stage the home and have it welcoming to buyers. You can't have the cake and eat it too, But, I mean, good for you, Susie, for looking past it, and I hope you get it.
Yeah.
I hope you get the house. I hope you have to keep me posted, and hopefully it's a happy day that you get the house, and then head to Sherwin-Williams or whatever. Is Sherwin-Williams a national company?
I got them down here in Florida, but if not,
all right.
Home Depot or Lowe's or something.
Yeah, you get yourself some. Let's get yourself some paint.
Yeah.
I have. Gosh, I don't even remember these questions that I posted. I remember this one too. So this was based on another comment from that video coming from Greta Freeman 1809. They say, for me, personal photos aren't the issue, because I had talked about taking down personal photos.
Yeah. That's common.
Stuff of your kids, like kids' names and stuff off the walls to depersonalize, right? She says, for me, personal photos aren't the issue. It's the absolute mess the home is in when it's shown. The clutter, the visible untidiness, especially when a room is packed with furniture boxes making a room look smaller than it actually is. When looking at photos of a home on a realtor's media platform and the home is untidy, I won't go see it in person. Staging is key. So they bring up a huge point, and actually, Greta's Freeman 1809. Stay tuned, because literally on Wednesday I have a video dropping about that exact subject, about decluttering. So your timing is great. But, you know, that stuff, I mean, Tim, I just can't, I sometimes I kind of scratch my head and I'm like, how are you okay with letting the world see like your dirty laundry,
Yes.
and your old dirty dishes,
Right.
and just stuff. I mean, I had a client years ago that, and she was a sweet lady. She was an older woman she was so sweet, but she loved dolls. She loved collecting dolls. You probably know where this is going.
I feel a creepy vibe coming on.
So we walk upstairs, and her husband had passed. She lived in the house by herself. It was a big house. Raised her family in it and the whole 9 yards. And family was there trying to get her, packing up. Need to get mom out of this house. It's just too much to take care of. And I'm getting a tour of all the different rooms. And 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. And walk into this one room that I all I can tell you is there are probably about 100 sets of eyeballs looking at me. Shelves, custom shelves built, dolls on every single shelf.
How
there
much
was
would
a
they
day
have to pay
bed.
to spend the night in that room?
No, thank you. I'd rather go to Salem, Massachusetts,
Yeah.
and stay in one of those 300-year-old homes.
Just watching you sleep.
I was. I mean, I will tell a seller. I will tell a homeowner, like, I don't hold back. Like, I don't sugarcoat, but I'm not going to be mean, and I'm going to be sensitive, because these dolls were her family.
They meant a lot.
They were her family.
Yeah.
And so I did say to the son, I'm like, the dolls have to go. He says,
Yeah.
I know. And so, but I did tell her, but it was creepy like you would not believe. And
Yeah.
we've all seen pictures on the internet, right, of homes where the seller doesn't do that. But I'm like, we've got to get that room packed up. Like, before this house goes on the market, we have got every single one of them have to find a new home, and but not here.
Yeah. And in those instances, you're talking about two different. You're talking about, so on the one hand, we're talking about dirty dishes, unkept laundry. That's a superficial issue, and then the other kind is a foundational issue, which is, and I don't mean house foundation. I mean literally a issue that foundational to the room itself. Those dolls, and what a lot of agents do is they don't. I've seen it all too often. They are afraid to tell the seller the truth about what it's going to take to actually get the home sold. If it potentially means they have to sell them something that they don't necessarily love to hear, but and that's something that it's a tough, it's walking a tightrope, because sure, I would love to earn someone's business, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of my integrity and not tell them, hey, those creepy dolls need to go. Of course, you're going to say it in a loving way. You want,
Right.
you respect what she's done to collect that, and that means something to her. But yeah, you have to have the integrity and the personal fortitude to be honest with people, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what they want. They don't want to be told what they want to hear. They want to know what it's going to take to sell the house.
No, you know what? That's an issue in our industry. It's an issue in the industry in the sense that predominantly the people, and it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's the 80-20 rule. 20% of, in any given test group, like 20% of the people are going to do 80% of the work, right? And I don't think real estate's any different. I think 20% of the real estate population are and probably, I may be dramatizing that, right? Maybe making it a little bit dramatic and saying only 20% is professional, and I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that a good part of our industry, they're people pleasers. And they'll bend over backwards, and they don't want to hurt their feelings. And they put that above telling someone what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I mean,
and why did that person hire you? They don't need
this
any
is
more
it.
friends.
And you know what? I will go to the extent of telling people, like I've got, and it's taken a lot of training and a lot of practice and, sincere effort I'm doing this for 28 years. Like it doesn't happen like overnight, but just, really, really honing my professionalism, my skills to get to the point to say to somebody now, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And it's all for the greater good.
Hey, you say it with love in your heart, they're going to know it.
100%. And you know what? I have not had anybody get mad at me. I've had pushback, and then I have to be firm. Like I remember I had a home that
How
was.
do you not love these dolls?
Well, they had dolls. I had another one that was like, they collected, it was floor to ceiling pictures of the family and collectibles. It was like, they're very like the collectors, Yeah. And of course they started taking stuff off of walls, and it had been up there a long time. So then they had to paint because there's like shadow images of all these things all over the walls. But you know what? I knew that if we did that, the house would sell faster. And sure enough, this was years and years ago when the market wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
And we sold it in a weekend, which was unheard of at the time because we did all the things, and it took several weeks. It took longer than they wanted to put the house on the market, but it was worthwhile. But it's just, it's just, I think that, why realtors don't do that kind of stuff is just because of that, because the clutter, the other issue too, and you're talking about foundation actually makes me think of another point, is a very, very pragmatic reason, Tim, is that if you get too much crap in your house, you can't see the house.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
You can't see the basement. So a buyer that can't see the basement walls, a buyer that can't see, past all that stuff to actually see structure and all the important stuff, they're only going to assume it's not maintained, because if they can't see it, you can't see it. And if you can't see it, you don't know what's going on. So they have to prepare for the worst. Now the offer is reduced because you're like, well, the basement's chock full of crap. How do I can't dig through all of it to see we have this one little hairline crack. How do I know there's not more cracks?
Well, here's the underlying realities. When I hear things about like untidiness, for example, when I hear laundry left out, things like that, everybody likes to point fingers at the owner, but they're living in that house. Do you every single day clean up every single thing you do? A lot of times
I do.
God bless you. You come move in here, Jen.
That's my ADHD. Like people that know me will know, like that's part of my.
God bless you.
My superpower. It's a curse. No joke.
I can't do that.
It's a curse. It is a curse. I will say that, because it's like I should be off having fun, but I'm like I have to get my office all ready. I have to do all these things. I can't rest until everything's put back. And my poor kids. Oh, my poor kids. I'm like, you are playing in the playroom, and not a single toy ever made it to they would bring it into the living room, but it made it right back into the playroom before they went to bed. Like I didn't have any toys in my the kitchen and stuff. It wasn't that they couldn't bring it, like I said, but anybody that dropped by my house, they weren't tripping over stuff, but I kind of feel bad too, because the kids were, you know what I mean? It was like,
if you think 100 eyeballs are scary staring at you, I'm going to really shock you, but I'll show you my office after we're done with this call, and you'll see how cluttered it is. But the reality is when I hear about homes that are not tidy and things, one of the ways that I address that, and I've seen people do in the past, is we just limit I don't want you, if I'm trying to sell your house, I don't want you having your house 24/7 available. Let's pick Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Is that fair? Can you keep the house clean? If not, how about Tuesdays and Thursdays?
You bring a good point. You bring a good point, but sometimes it's just not
We need to put it on us, right?
Yeah.
We need to take as much as we can off the shoulders of them. And if they can't keep it, because it's a single mom with 3 kids, good luck keeping that house clean for more than an hour.
You're right. You're absolutely right. 100%.
It's important that we step in and we do what we can to help alleviate that burden from her.
Which doesn't mean, just to clarify, doesn't mean we're going over there to pick up the kids' toys.
No. I got to learn how to pick up
just so that there's no
first.
Miscommunication. Anybody watching this, they'll be like, okay, so Tim, you'll be here. Can you stop by around 7? Because that's usually when we're done with everything, and you can help me put stuff. Be like, Tim's like, what did I sign up for? Well, this has been super fun. I want to do a couple. Shameless plugs here. Before we finish up. Hold on a second. I get my technical skills going on here. So, I have a podcast that is just a fun thing. It completely separate from my YouTube channel. My good friend Jackie Baker down in North Jersey, Jersey. What does she say? The Jersey. I forget the tagline now. My brain's going blank. But anyways, we teamed up. We have this fun podcast. If you want a few laughs, she grabs some Reddit stories and some crazy real estate disaster Reddit stories. So some of the stuff people post on Reddit is kind of makes your head, and it makes you scratch your head rather. And I don't know about it until the podcast. She reads it to me, and we talk about it. And we kind of laugh our butts off for an hour and have some fun. So if you want a little lighten the mood, we do have a YouTube channel, but we're on every platform for podcast. So feel free to check it out on your commute if you so do choose. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up here is this is how you can get to Tim. So Tim, I'll leave Tim's the link to his website in the comments down below. And if you're looking down, and I don't know why this is somebody needs to update the map. Somebody you're not. Yeah, just put it on your to-do list. Because he's not in New York.
Yeah.
No, he's
I'm down in Florida, but
Merritt Island, Florida. So if anyone needs any assistance down that neck of the woods or any of the surrounding areas, if Tim can't help you, I am positive he can point you to somebody that can down in the Florida area. So That's what I got. So Tim, my friend, this has been fun.
It's been so fun. It has been so great. Thanks for having me on, Jen. It was just fantastic.
Thank you for taking time away from the craziness and busy day and all the things you got going on down there to kind of chat with me for almost an hour and a half. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your insight and contribution. So
oh shucks, it's my pleasure. I got to go. I have a closet with $50 I got to go put away somewhere. Just kidding.
So as tradition, we're gonna this is what we do in this show is we're gonna dance it out a little bit.
Dance it out.
And we're gonna say thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Be nice to each other. Do something kind for someone out there. And we'll see you here next Monday, 5 p.m. for another invigorating conversation to be continued. And have a great week. Enjoy the weather wherever you're at.
Absolutely.
All right, Tim. See those dance moves. You probably get better dance moves than middle-aged old lady like me.
That's a challenge. I don't know.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you, everybody.